Hello, and welcome back to the Audible Finish, where we discuss the week gone by in the world of wrestling. I'm your host, Dimitri Kalos, and alongside me, as always, is my esteemed co-host, Thanasi. Welcome back, Thanasi.
Mariska Hargitay. It's been such a while.
It has been a little while, but we're gonna get back into the thick of things and discuss the developments heading into WWE SummerSlam, which was really this week's greatest uh, development in that case, I think, is the official announcement of CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre with the surprise twist of Seth Rollins as special guest referee. We'll discuss that and more later on in the episode. And we will also have time to address the stellar, albeit violent, blood and guts match between the Elite and Team AEW from this past week's Dynamite. Is it the best one yet? We'll discuss that and more very soon. If you are enjoying the podcast and have a moment, please like, share, and subscribe. And if there is a certain topic that interests you more than the other, please feel free to jump ahead to it using the timestamps in the description below. On that note, Thanasi, let's dive straight into SmackDown. And we are seeing the Bloodline slowly take away all of Cody's allies. This week, they took out Kevin Owens, and this is heading into the Solo Sikoa Cody Rhodes match at SummerSlam for the WWE Championship. Thanasi, what are your thoughts on the rivalry that is brewing between Cody and the Bloodline faction? And are you enjoying the slow stripping down of all of Cody's assistants, all of his mates?
Well, you posed the question in the form of what do I think about the rivalry that's building? And my biggest reflection on it is premature. Solo is doing very well for himself, right? And I don't have any problems with the direction that he's heading in. What I have a problem with is how quickly he's getting there, right? He does not need to be main eventing SummerSlam just yet, right? He's very recently, it's only been a matter of months since WrestleMania, where he was still in that enforcer role. So being promoted up to that leader role now just makes me think that it's not quite there yet. However, I do have speculation as to why that might be the case. Since it is it's still premature for Solo to be there, must be a good reason. And I think that after the main event, we're going to have another chapter, another curveball being thrown in the Bloodline storyline with the return of Roman Reigns. Now, kind of the issue that we would probably, or that I think of with that is that's not bad. That's not a problem, right? But really, your heavyweight champion of the world should be the most prominent person on your television screen, especially on that show. And it just seems that with the developments in the Bloodline plot, that Cody is no longer the driving force behind storyline development, right? He's there, he's a constant, and that's important for the world champion. But he's not, there's no story that is building around him. He is part of someone else's story. What do you think?
Um, I don't necessarily agree or disagree with your point. For me, I think Cody Rhodes is still very much the one of the main drivers of interest on SmackDown. Um, when it comes to getting meddled into the Bloodline story, it invariably is going to be a bit of a distraction. So it's hard to say that he is or isn't getting lost in the shuffle. But I don't have a problem with storylines developing around your stars as long as it doesn't detract from what they need to do. Cody Rhodes needs to have a good reign as champion. I don't mind him meddling, getting involved with the bloodline, and that transitioning away from Cody Rhodes if Roman Reigns does appear at SummerSlam, as many are speculating. As long as it doesn't actually take away from his title reign and he can move past them and keep having good matches and have things going on, I don't mind it. And I think that realistically, given the history between Cody Rhodes and Roman Reigns, it's going to be a fantastic changing of the status quo of their relationship if Roman Reigns does interfere and it does somehow lead to Cody Rhodes holding on to his prized possession. So yes, for me, I'm very much just trying to ride the wave, and I'm just trying to give the new bloodline a chance to impress. And so far, they are doing that. And with Solo, yes, it is premature for him to be the leader, but this is his first real world championship match. So the your first world championship match is not necessarily going to be the win. Sometimes that's just giving you a bit of a taste. So I don't know. Look, I'm enjoying the work, and I very much am curious to see what happens post SummerSlam with it, with everything, with Cody and the Bloodline. I'm very curious to see what happens from that end. But some other things that are happening that are coming to a head at SummerSlam, it feels, from the SmackDown side of things, is the feud between Logan Paul and LA Knight. And they had the Logan officially signed the contract on this past SmackDown, which is set it up, and they very much they've centered the feud around the idea that Logan Paul is bigger than LA Knight ever will be, and that LA Knight's entire existence is defined by his ability, his time in the squared circle, whereas Logan Paul is beyond that. Do you think that's their way of setting up the eventual win, which is that this means more to LA Knight, and that's why he's going to be able to topple the current US champion?
I think this is more what are our strengths? Like, what can we lean into to create a clash here? Because LA Knight is not what you would call a wrestler's wrestler, right? He's on the spectrum. He's quite a good sports entertainer, and because that's the end of the spectrum where celebrities come in, you have to develop a nuance to differentiate between a career wrestler who is not all that technically focused against a celebrity who can wrestle quite well, right? Because Logan Paul's not one of the shittier celebrity wrestlers. So I think the nuance there goes to fame, goes to prominence. I've got pop culture appeal. You've just got, so shall I say, like domestic appeal or local appeal. Local meaning to the market, right? Not
To wrestling.
not in a globe. Um, so I think that's more the motivation. I do think that they're going to win, but I don't think that that's the reason they've chosen to go along this path. I think they're just trying to develop a good story, and the logical booking call on the afternoon of when they have call time will be that LA Knight's going to go over.
But does he go over?
I think it's time. I think it's time. If you look at the match list, there's a whole lot of opportunities for title retention, and that means that if you've got someone that you're waiting to take a belt off of, then it's a really good opportunity to kind of hit there, because we haven't seen a lot of pay-per-view title changes for the mid-card straps, have we? So I think this one's going to be that real opportunity. I mean, you and I were sitting here last year thinking that LA Knight was going to win that Battle Royal at SummerSlam because that was supposed to be his time. That's supposed to be his jump to prominence, his big breakout. And we're still waiting, to be honest. But I think this is the time.
Well, I think it's the right time, but I wonder if they're going to have Logan Paul drop the title in his home state. He's from Ohio. This is, I believe, going to be held in Cleveland. So I like that's the one little problem or like spanner in the works in my hopes of LA Knight finally achieving some title gold, which I think he's very much proven he's earned, and at least he's earned the opportunity to be a champion of some sort in WWE. But we'll see how that progresses, and we'll probably discuss that a little bit more next week as well. But like in the meantime, let's move on to discuss Monday Night Raw. And like as huge CM Punk fans, I think we cannot start anywhere else except with the official announcement of CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre. He came out, he said he's cleared and he was ready to go and fight Drew McIntyre. The officials and referees were separating the two to make sure that didn't happen just yet, because Adam Pearce made it official for SummerSlam. but he's also thrown in Seth Rollins as special guest referee. Thanasi, what did you make of this whole segment and the official announcement of these two that they're finally going to square up against each other in the ring?
If I can be honest with you, there's a couple of dimensions. Firstly, the fact that we've got the announcement, fantastic, right? We were speculating. We thought maybe they would throw them in Hell in a Cell as the first point, but I'm glad that we're just doing it at SummerSlam, second biggest pay-per-view of the year. Put them in singles action because they're both very good singles wrestlers. They don't need the gimmick to, accentuate their abilities.
Agreed.
So I'm very, very keen on getting this match. And it's almost at the point, and this is where you've had a great story build, where it doesn't really matter who wins here, right? As far as the story, like CM Punk could win, get justice. Drew McIntyre could get his prominence. It just means that the ride is fantastic, right? It's as we always say, it's not so much the destination as much as it is the journey. The journey, however, has taken a bit of an interesting path with the reinsertion of Seth freaking Rollins in the path of CM Punk. And I think it's a really clever booking decision, even though I thought that a special guest referee stipulation would have been perhaps more suitable to the Women's World Championship match between Rhea and Liv Morgan, like put Dom in there. I think for long-term purposes, this is very clever because it gives another, shall I say, another element to the story of CM Punk and Seth Rollins, because we're going to have to get there eventually, right? Like we missed the boat for WrestleMania, unfortunately, but we are going to get there again. And I think this is a good way to kind of sow those seeds so that Punk's next program after Drew McIntyre can be set up quite efficiently and quite quickly. That's my view on it.
I completely agree. I also want to commend WWE because it feels like the Money in the Bank outburst of Drew McIntyre was there to sow the seeds of this plan of getting a special guest referee. Essentially, Seth Rollins is there to be an enforcer that can't be beat up. He can't be harmed. He can keep things in check. So I want to commend them for almost planting those seeds and getting that started from the last pay-per-view. I also really love the insertion of Seth Rollins for those reasons you mentioned, because it feels like in WWE that the rivalry we're really waiting to see is Seth Rollins versus CM Punk. And they did a great job in throwing Drew in the mix and really making that must see and much anticipated. And at the same time, bringing Seth Rollins back into the fold, I think has actually done exactly what they hoped to do, which is make everyone go, oh crap, oh, we really want to see these two go up against each other. I'm very curious. I heard some fans were theorizing that this could be a similar moment to when Shawn Michaels officiated the match between Bret Hart and The Undertaker, wherein he inadvertently costs the other opponent, even though he's trying to attack one. So they're saying, like, what if Seth Rollins inadvertently tries to attack Punk, but he dodges and attacks Drew, and that gives Punk the win? That could be interesting, but I'm so excited to see how they do it. And we know that CM Punk in singles action, that's where he really thrives at his best. And it's going to be great to see it finally happen on pay-per-view again after so many years from WWE. So yeah, so no, I'm very psyched for that. Another match that I didn't think I would get as excited for as I have is Damian Priest versus Gunther for the World Heavyweight Championship. Now, obviously, we are all very excited for Gunther finally getting into the world title picture. But I feel like the last couple of weeks, they've done a great job pivoting so that Damon Priest is actually the babyface going into this. I was very concerned about the prospect of heel on versus heel for the championship. But I feel like they have done a good job in getting heat behind Gunther and also support behind Damian Priest. With Damian Priest and Rhea Ripley, they're both basically baby faces now within the Judgment Day, really, when it comes to in the eyes of the fans. So they're kind of in a different position to the rest of their faction mates. But what have you made of this little feud that's sort of developed now between Priest and Gunther?
I'm kind of, I don't have a strong opinion here, right? I've got weak views on this, and the views are I'm not fully sold on their big clashing point is that one is a refined European that is sort of, the elegant one, the upper class one, against the street rat champion, kind of like, you don't belong here. My issue with that, the reason I don't find it believable, maybe because I haven't been watching it as closely. And like I said, these are very weak views. I don't have very strong feelings here, but I just feel like the gimmick of Gunter is not upper class European. It's more just gritty wrestler, like super dedicated to the ring, to the craft. It's about the in-ring wrestling, right? And that's his how he intimidates his opponents, just beats the shit out of them. Um, with Damian Priest, likewise, his gimmick as part of the Judgment Day, it's not sort of street rat and messy, kind of gritty, right? Like his gimmick is he's dark, he's solemn, very hard to get across him. Like he's kind of like he's the cool one, if I can put it that way, right? Like because he keeps his cool. He's very macho, if I can put it that way. So it could be just me not paying attention too much to the storyline, but I think there may have been an inherent weakness that the two styles of the wrestlers don't necessarily pair up very well, and this is what the writers ended up coming up with. What do you think? I think because I've got the weak views. What do you think of this one?
Well, I think that they have sort of explained the reasons behind that because with Damien Priest, it's the idea of you are not on the level to represent the company as the world champion, to represent Raw as its world champion. And Gunther's idea is basically that since I've been in WWE, for people that know his NXT UK days and NXT days, they know this very well. He's basically been a champion for most of his time. And he's always carried it quite well. And I think that's the idea they're leaning into is that we say upper class, that is part of it, but I think in general it's relative to what they mean as a champion in WWE. Gunther is basically saying, I am a champion, and he's basically saying, Damien Priest, you are not. And he's basically challenging his ability to even carry the weight of a world heavyweight championship. I'm to be fair though, I am a bit more invested into it because I've been watching a bit more closely, but I feel like they have leaned into it for all of Damien Priest's reign. There's been the question of is he worthy, and I think with Gunther they're using that as the crux of the feud. It's I don't think you are, and so I also think I'm giving benefit of the doubt when it comes to because I agree Gunther was always just about I am the best in this ring. I represent I want to preserve the sanctity of the ring. But I also feel like, like as with any character, there's room to grow and to develop it further. And we know that his best mate in Ludwig Kaiser, he's very insistent about his European elegance. So maybe he's just bringing a bit of that into his character as well. And that there, so I don't know. And with Damon Priest, I certainly think it's a babyface ploy. The street rat thing, it's to garner sympathy, to get people behind him now that he's going to slowly transition away from the Judgment Day as that's what I think is happening. I think that we're slowly working our way towards the breakdown of the Judgment Day faction. What do you think?
I do see ourselves heading towards there, and I think there might be several aspects to it because you've got the world champion, the leader of the faction, who's kind of losing control because everyone's unfocused. You've got Rhea trying to keep her dom dom under control, but also with Liv trying to pull the strings. And all the while Liv's pulling the strings, it also looks like she's tempting Finn Balor, or at least it looks as if Finn Balor is actually involved here. So because the faction's been kind of like in the main event of Raw for a couple years now, I want them to pull it off really, really well. I want it to be a fantastic story, even though I don't feel like we need to bring it to an end. But it's been around long enough where if we say end it now, we're not going to say things like, oh, it was too soon or we missed the boat. Like we've given it a great shot. Maybe let's end it while we are in control as opposed to waiting for it to stale because it's not stale yet.
I want to really build on that point by discussing the Rhea Ripley Dom live segment from Raw. We saw Dom come out and basically say ex completely clear, with complete clarity, I hate you. And he's sided with Rhea. So it seems like in the interim, they have sorted out their little tiff. I think SummerSlam is going to be the moment where shit hits the fan within the Judgment Day. I actually think that it's going to be there that they strike, and I don't know if it's going to be in both matches of Rhea and Damon Priest, or if it's just going to be in the Rhea match. But I think that that's what's going to happen, and look, that's a bit of a prediction on my point,
If I
but I
can,
think we've gotten to it.
yeah, if I can just add this perspective, and it's not a big thing, but just think it's worth adding on. The segment where Dom actually said, "No, Liv, I don't like you," or "I'm not interested in you," I actually think that that would have played out better. Everything exactly the same to have taken place the night after SummerSlam. And why do I say that? Because that would make Rhea even more livid because she's like, I'm losing control of my man because it looks as if he's being tempted by Liv Morgan. Liv Morgan has now a victory over me, whether it's by dirty whatever, but she's got a victory over me and she's kind of like lauding about it in the crowd and then referring to my man. So I think that real anger and then Dom just snapping under the pressure from his mummy to just like unleash and say, no, I don't like you, right? Something like that. I don't think it's a big deal. And maybe it's because they're trying to set it up for the go home show to have a big development. But I just feel like all those plot lines, it could have been placed really, really well for the night after SummerSlam and then lead it up to like a blow off, even for Hell in a Cell. Like put those two in the cell together with Dom as special guest referee or something.
Well, the only reason I don't I appreciate where they've placed it is because this sounds ridiculous, but there is also the possibility that Dominic is going to betray Mami, whether inadvertently or no, sorry. What I mean is he'll definitely cost her, I think, at SummerSlam. I think Liv is walking out as champion. It could be inadvertent or it could be a betrayal. So I like the idea that beforehand he's done that because now it's sort of put everything up in the air. I feel like for the way they've teased it, the real masterminds are Liv and Finn when that does break down. Obviously, we don't know what kind of position the Judgment Day will be in after they do have some sort of split. But I don't know. Like, do you see Dominic leaning, sort of going into Liv's corner? I feel like they're going to want to keep that pairing of Rhea and Dom together. I feel like they're stronger together than they are apart. What do you think?
I do think they're stronger together, but it would just be impactful for them. It would be a swerve, I
It would
suppose.
be.
Um, and like sometimes Vince used to swerve us for the sake of a swerve, whereas here, and I guess I'm not a creative genius here, so I don't know what the best way to make it happen would be. But I don't know, like it's I always thought that maybe Liv stealing Dom would be the biggest way to just set Rhea off. Like this is the way that I have defeated the most dominant wrestler in this current era, right? Like I went for her man who was her rock or whatever like that. Like you could frame it that way. So I think that there are ways to do it, and maybe I guess. Well, I mean, like Eddie Guerrero, he cheated on China, right? And she was his mamacita. Like we could play it out the same way. I don't know.
So that's actually a very apt point. That could be exactly what they're leading to.
Yeah.
Totally believable. I mean, they've got the look right. They've matched up and everything. They're doing all right. So yeah, I don't. I'm look for me. It's again like I feel like we're in a period of WWE where multiple stories are happening at the same time, and it feels like they've all got their own point of interest, and that's very rare. Like, and honestly, not even that long ago, it felt like the only thing carrying WWE was Roman Reigns and the Bloodline. It's nice to know now we're in a different stage where there are multiple things going on. But there's a lot of talking about WWE. Maybe we should shift gears a bit and discuss some stuff from AEW. Obviously, with this past Dynamite, it was blood and guts, which, can I say, there's a lot to unpack here. But firstly, I'm just going to ask you a very clear question. Did you enjoy this match?
I thoroughly enjoyed this match, right? And I think it genuinely is one of the strengths of AEW, like the blood and guts match. Like I think they actually do it quite well. Um, and one of the benefits is, as you'll probably have seen from the history, the the date of Blood and Guts, the Dynamite episode, does not always necessarily have to happen at the same time. Like it's generally like a cold month sort of thing. In the last well, in the four editions that it's been the case. So I've been, like pretty satisfied overall with how it's gone as a brand. And this match was like thoroughly enjoyable. I think they did really well to give sufficient prominence to the match by having, yes, the Elite, the biggest faction, but also having the heavyweight champion of the world in there, right? That was pretty good to see.
It was, and I'll tell you what, I had some reservations heading into this match because I don't know if you felt this way as well. It felt to me a bit like Team AEW was Team Midcard. Team
Mm-hmm.
like almost a
Mm-hmm.
little bit irrelevant because in previous years they had some real like heavy players involved, and this year it was a bit different. Even the Elite, taking like without someone like Kenny Omega, it did feel like, oh, this isn't the same Elite as what was in the past. But I've got to tip my hat off to these guys. They pulled it out of the park, in my opinion, for what this is meant to be, which is, like a hardcore violence match. I think they did a fantastic job. And I'll say, like, I was particularly impressed while also repulsed with the sandwich board of barbed wire that was put that Anthony Bowens was put into the middle as the filling, and then the Swanton bomb on top of him. That was gnarly. And it's an example that of the creativity that a lot of these wrestlers have, where even now they're able to sort of come up with different spots, different ideas of what to do, along with the classics. And threatening to burn Jack Perry was hilarious. Very well done. And the way, and again, like also when Hangman Adam Page tied up Swerve on the outside and almost had him in the Christ position on the cross. Like, look, we're not believers, so we don't find that sort of stuff blasphemous. We just find it interesting and entertaining.
And we find it artistic as well.
Yes, of course. And and you could argue that it's a loving
An homage
homage to the Lord and Savior
to
himself.
depictions of the Lord and Savior
Uh,
to be more sensitive.
but like, like like there was a lot going on in this match that was to be enjoyed and to be appreciated. And I saw a post as well. The image when Swerve finally came into the ring, all the bodies are down, and on the other side, it's Hangman Adam Page, and they lock eyes and they meet in the middle. It was magnificent. And the thing is, this feels like it's going to be the rivalry that almost defines AEW. It feels like this is their two great just rivals. And I'm just enjoying it. And honestly, it made me a bit upset that All In isn't going to be Adam Page versus Swerve Strickland, because I feel like right now that is your biggest match that you can pull off in the company in terms of actual spite. Like two people that genuinely hate each other. And what I love about it is Adam Page's issues with Swerve Strickland are totally correct. He invaded his home. He went into the
Went
crib
to the
of his
cot.
child. Like, and yet people are cheering Swerve and they hate Adam Page. Like, there's a lot going on in this match, and I think the fact that my expectations were a little lower than previous years really elevated it in my eyes. Look, there's obviously the question of the I posed for the sake of, garnering interest. Is this the best one that they've done? My opinion is No, but it's probably my second favorite. I think my favorite is still the one from 2022 between the BCC and the JAS as well, the Jericho Appreciation Society, with which the spot with Claudio having Jericho in the sharpshooter on atop the cage. I think that's probably my favorite one still, but this one is a close second, and they did a great job.
Can I make this observation? Because we all know how bloodthirsty wrestling fans are, right? There is a rule in wrestling generally where you don't tease a spot if you're not going to pay it off, right? Like you don't tease a table spot unless you're eventually going to put someone through the table. Likewise, when they in the first Blood and Guts, right, they were teasing that they were going to throw Jericho off the top of the cage. His team surrendered, so the baby faces said, "Okay, we're not going to do it." But then they threw him off anyway because they teased the spot. This represents one of these very rare instances where the fans we don't want to see the spot that you're teasing, right? Which is to set Jack Perry on fire. It's like, no, 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 okay. It's like, no, no, not good. Please, no more wood, right? Bird wood, not the man.
Yes.
So I think it really shows that they hit the limits of the bloodthirstiness of wrestling fans. Now I'm sure there are some wacky ones that were like, yeah, fucking set him on fire. I am certain that 99+% were actually in the okay, like this is it. Like surrender for the man's own good, because he was hardcore and said, you know what, screw it, like put me on fire, I'm not surrendering. Um, so props for the creativity in the final spot. Admittedly, you can say it wasn't very impactful because it wasn't a big finishing spot. Like it wasn't a photo finish of like someone going through a table or someone being choked out or some kind of a spot happening on top of the cage or coming down off the cage. But it was sufficiently creative, I think, or sufficiently innovative that I was happy with it as a finish personally.
Yeah, no, I had no real issues with it. I think they handled it quite well. And it reminded me, like that point you mentioned, it reminds me of when Adam Copeland beat Christian Cage in the I Quit match, when he threatened to hit him with Spike or whatever, that weapon with all the nails and all that, where I genuinely did not want to see him use it. So even though it was a bit upsetting that they introduced the weapon to never actually pay it off, at the same time, I was glad that they didn't use it. And in this case, I think you're absolutely right. We didn't want to see Jack Perry lit ablaze, especially considering that he was tied up to the cage. Like there was nowhere for him to move. If he was put on fire, he's just burning.
Yeah, like
Like
he's not stopping, dropping, and rolling, right? He's
yeah,
just
yeah.
burning.
There's nothing. So for his own safety, which if you ask CM Punk, you should have been worried about this last year. But for his own safety, he avoided doing the spot that they wanted him to do. But yeah, that was pretty. Oh, like as a side note, did you see Drew McIntyre put up a post of him posing with Jack Perry?
No.
So he put it on his social media and on his Twitter, he wrote something like, "It's a real photo, cry us a river." Which I like. Look, to be honest, I like it, and I feel like enough times passed where where that shouldn't be considered sensitive. But apparently Drew had to take it down.
Hmm.
He apparently had to take it down. Some people saying, "Oh, maybe WWE didn't like it or whatever." I don't know. I thought it was amusing, and really only the people that know would have found that amusing. The people that don't know, it's just like, oh, he's just taking a photo with some guy. Maybe they would go, "Oh, that's Jack Perry," but they wouldn't have thought anything else of it. But yeah, that was just a little side note thing that I noticed today. Um, I guess we've got a bit of time, so we can touch briefly as well on the MJF American Championship uh, introduction that he made. And the reason I want to talk about this is we've had the All Atlantic Championship, we had the International Championship. Now it's called the AEW American Championship or North American Championship, something like that.
Just American.
Just American Championship. It's gone through a couple. He obviously was doing this as a bit of a heel maneuver. Do you think they should have timed it in a place that wasn't so pro-America, perhaps? Because
But
people started chanting USA and getting behind it quite a bit.
yeah, yeah, no, I agree with you that it was a bit of um, maybe not very well thought out, um, sort of segment because the point of it is it's an international title, but I don't plan on, going on any planes too far. Like I want to make my work easy, right? Because I can barely stand up after wrestling a 60-minute match. So I think that's the impression that I got from it. But yeah, it fell a bit flat when you've got people starting to chant USA. Although the move itself, I think, is reminiscent of when Osprey turned the IWGP US title into the UK title, right, for heel heat.
Yep.
In this case, the heel heat is a bit difficult to pull because like you're actually making it closer to the location that you're working in. So it felt a little bit weird, but maybe he's going to get more booze for it at All In.
Hopefully. And it made me think, were they in Canada last week?
Potentially.
I know that they were in Canada recently, and it just made me think, oh, if they booked an international show, like a Canada
Maybe
show,
2 weeks ago for the Owen Hart finals.
maybe then it was. But I was thinking like then, or even if he prolonged it and did it the week before All In, or the week of All In, because that's going to be in the UK. I think that would have been an interesting bit of timing. But look, we're nitpicking. Like the idea is it's still a heelish thing. It's still a very selfish thing to do, which is to rebrand a title in the first place. So, like we're nitpicking slight details. I think I agree with this is meant to be a an allusion to when Osprey did it. So I think it does work well in the story that they're telling. And I have to say, I would love to see those two go up against each other again. They had a fantastic match, which we didn't really discuss because we didn't have the show last week. But we can briefly discuss. Just for me, that is actually I think it's probably my second favorite match of the year. And it's probably the first if we're just talking about bell to bell skill. But it's probably my second favorite match of the year, just behind the WrestleMania 40 Roman Reigns versus Cody Rhodes, just because that one had the feels and everything behind it. But that was fantastic. 59 minutes and 58 seconds. I think they did a fantastic job. I don't know. Did you have any quick thoughts you wanted to raise on that?
Look, I haven't seen it in its entirety yet. I've seen
Oh,
the highlights. So
then I say, all right, we're gonna end the podcast soon, so that gives you time to watch this match.
so I can watch it together.
I certainly think when it comes to our end of year awards and we're talking about the best matches of the year, we'll certainly be referencing that match. I'm certain of it. So for Thanasi's own sake of getting time to watch some of the wrestling that he hasn't had time to fully consume, we're going to leave it there. We're going to call that the end of this week's edition of the Audible Finish, but make sure to tune in next week where we discuss everything related to SummerSlam. I think we're getting very excited for it. And honestly, I, it's one of the great times of the wrestling calendar when it's SummerSlam. It's one of the big shows that we really do. We're coming and creeping along to CM Punk's in-ring return. I'm hyped for it. Are you hyped for it?
I am very, very keen.
Oh, excellent. Well, we'll make sure to discuss that and more next week. And I say, great to have your company as always.
Peace be upon you, my son.
And thank you to everyone for tuning in. Until next time, we hope everything you do is just too sweet.